going to introduce today's moderator. Dr. Abuzar Kabir is a Tuesday Times Roundtable veteran. We were just counting, and so we believe this is his fourth time moderating a Tuesday Times Roundtable. He is a postdoctoral fellow at the International Forensic Research Institute and an adjunct professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry here at FIU. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in applied chemistry and chemical technology from the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. After receiving his PhD in analytical chemistry from USF, Tampa, Florida, which, by the way, USF is starting their own global learning program modeled somewhat after ours, and so we're excited to see that develop. He worked in the industry for several years in various capacities. The major focus of his research has been soft gel chemistry, the fastest growing discipline in material science, in solving analytical chemistry and separation science, forensic and toxicological problems. Dr. Kabir's real interest that I know from having been to all of his roundtables is science education, or STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, focusing on improving the quality of STEM education, improving access to STEM education, so on and so forth. In addition to his current responsibilities at FIU, he teaches chemistry classes at Broward College, Miami-Dade College, and over Southeastern University, and as was mentioned, doing all that to inspire students in the STEM career. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kabir.
All right. Thank you, Eric, for your kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here, to be the mentor of this forum. And I love to come back every semester. So it's been my fourth presentation here. And from the very beginning, I'm a fierce advocate of science, technology, engineering, and math education in United States. As Eric mentioned, that my background is in analytical chemistry and with a exposure to both Asian education system as well as United States education system. So I can basically I have the ability and I have the privilege to compare which one brings most out of both the world. So with that, we'll start our discussion. So before I start, first I will give some facts and figures, and then followed by I'll present some items for you to participate in the debate. So with that, let's start. So the discussion today is very important with the current context. As we all know that United States is losing its ground continuously each and every day on science, technology, math and engineering, whereas Asia, both Southeast Asia and East Asia in particular, they are making very good progress. The country I represent, Bangladesh, has basically grabbed in recent days from women education in science from 16 to 20%, whereas we will see what figures tells our standing in United States. So let's get started. So first of all, science, technology, math and engineering has a strong correlation with innovation. If there is no science, no innovation. As you have seen in the roads in United States, that many of our cars are from Korea. So in Korea, they do have 37% graduates are in science, technology, math and engineering. That makes them totally different from other nations, including United States, Europe and China. So as technological changes reshape the world of work, professionals in science, technology, engineering, math will continue to grow. And a recent poster from Microsoft says that 80% of the job in next decade will require one way or the other some kind of training in science, technology, engineering and math, whereas in 2020 only 16% of our workforce will have STEM degree. A recent article by Rodney Atkins, he is the Senior Research Vice President in IBM System and Technology Group, made a very good point. He has stated that only 5% United States workers are employed in the field that relates to science, technology, math and engineering, whereas they contribute 50% of our economic expansion. So it is not a good picture at all. And as per National Science Foundation, the percentage of US students studying STEM has decreased from 21% to 16% in last 3 decades. So, instead of growing, we are losing our ground. So, here is so now the question comes that 50% of our workforce should be women, and that is the case as you see from this graph that 52% workforce is comprised of men, whereas 48% women. Unfortunately, among that in STEM job, as you see 76% are from male and 24% is made up of women. So, there is a discrepancy, there is a asymmetry in the numbers. So, this basically this slide projects a little bit, goes on further. So, it shows the trend in 2000, between 2000 and 2009, the male college graduates from 69 million overall, this is in total 69 million, grew to 73, whereas female participation was from 6 million to 6.7 million, or 47% to 48%. As you see, STEM workers, male grew a little bit, but women remain static. So, no change at all, even though our population is growing, but overall percentage did not make any change. Now, even within the science discipline that includes technology, engineering, math altogether, you do see there is a difference between male preferences and female preferences. As you see in physical science, women prefer somehow physical sciences as opposed to engineering preferred by male. Computer science almost equal, even though their participation is little bit low, 24% versus 76%. So, now a question comes into picture that is it simply the academic training or something else. So, these slides made a very good points. As you see, without any college degree, still male dominates in any work that relates to science, technology, engineering and math. So, it is not the way we are preparing our women workforce, but also the way we are creating workforce in the society, in the workplace, in school and everywhere. So, there is a huge gender gap in place between male and female. So, now unless until we level the playing field, it is very difficult, it would be very difficult for us to maintain our dominance in the global marketplace. It is not, why? Because we are not the only player, there are a lot of other players in the globe. So, when they are making good progress, we are steadily losing our ground. So, unless until we ensure a competitive environment, equal opportunity for both male and female in the workplace, hospital, research, we will not be able to continue our dominance in the world. So, now let us take a look what are the different factors that are potentially causing this gender discrimination or gender gap. So, with that I will start, I will throw one point and I would like you to participate. I would like to hear your opinion in this regard. So, first of all, mindset. So, there are two different sets of school or school of thought in regards to mindset. One says that one is dependent upon or based upon growth mindset, that there is no difference, we all born equally with the same brain, talent, but depending on the opportunity, depending on the schooling system, you grow differently. So there is no built-in potential that some would grow with a higher talent and some would not grow. So if somebody is born with higher talent, they would succeed. If not, then potentially they would not succeed. So that is one school of thought. And another school of thought is fixed mindset. We all are born differently. We come with a God-gifted brain or talent, and we basically make our way to success or failure. So there is a very good study that was done by an American researcher. She compared a set of students in Bangladesh, the country I am from, and set of students in North America, and found that there is a strong correlation that it's not the fixed mindset, meaning that it depends on the way you are raised, you are brought up, you are nourished. It's not that something you get as a God gift. Unfortunately, many of us in United States, we believe that, well, women somehow do not have good skill in math, science and technology, and they are okay to be not pursuing in science, technology, math and engineering career. So now let's talk about that. What do you think? What is your opinion? I mean, which one you would find more scientific or right approach to believe that, well, it's the mindset, I mean, growth-based mindset or fixed mindset? So I would, yes, please.
I would hope, thinks that in the growth mindset we didn't get here just by because we think we're smart, but because we had to sit there and read books when we were kids. And you know, it's not like we saw a piece of paper and we're like, oh, this is what these words mean. So I think everybody here thinks in growth mindset. Well, none of us are incapable of doing anything.
All right. So any other opinion, please? Yes.
I think education is how much you put into it. I would go with growth and effort.
Okay, good. Yes, I mean basically, you know, as per the growth mindset, it is the effort. It is not that you have given a talent that you cannot simply surpass, or you cannot, by adding extra effort, you cannot accomplish anything. So, well, yes. Any other view? Yes, please.
I would say the same thing, like growth mindset, because like we all know that education is everything, right? But at the same time, like, you know, we're developing as well. I mean, take the word develop, same as growth. You know, they have almost the same similar meanings. You know,
Yes.
because we develop.
So, meaning that anybody can accomplish anything, right? I mean, that is what you are suggesting?
Yeah, as long as you like put, you know, more than just effort. In other words, be passionate of what you're doing.
Good. Any other opinion? All right. So anyway, I mean, as I said before, that the study that study clearly indicates that in United States, the way we nourish our kids in the school and in the following, I mean, followed by colleges or higher education institutions, we believe that it is the talent. You come with the talent and grow as you move forward. So that is not very friendly, or that is not basically saying that, well, you take the challenge. It is not that you have a given set of skill, rather would make you different. So the approach that we are exposing our kid beginning from elementary school is not a right approach for us to grow in science, technology, math and engineering. So let's move on. So now another one is career counseling, aptitude versus interest. So what exactly it means? It means that here you are given the opportunity, you are independent. It is your choice whether you would like to be a scientist or a lawyer or a teacher. It is not that we impose upon you. So there is a study in India and Bangladesh, in some in other Asian countries like Korea and China, that they do have a structured way from the very onset of their schooling. You are exposed to a given field, and then slowly and steadily you are being screened to show your aptitude, as opposed to simply, well, I do have a wonderful thinking that how about if can I be a lawyer? Fortunately, my office in FIU is surrounded by different academic counselors. So every day I overhear kids come and then ask, what is the chance for me to be a medical doctor? So as if that there is no foundation in place, rather they are coming and asking that from my academic credential, do you see any potential for me to be a medical doctor, or for me to be a forensic scientist, for me to be a lawyer? So there is no structured pathway that would guide you or screen you out to pursue a given career. So our system preaches for career counseling. Students go to the career advisor in school, in college, in higher academic institution, and seek their support or advice, but there is none to formulate that, well, from your aptitude, from your exposure to science, or from your potential, from your credential, I do see a good potential for you to be a lawyer, to be an engineer, to be a pharmacist, and so on. So I would like to make a point that career counseling should be based on aptitude, not interest. That I can be a NASA scientist, but for me there is no foundational work that would allow me to be a scientist working for NASA. So that is the wrong approach. So now, what is your opinion? Yes.
Yesterday I was watching a talk by Sir something Robinson, some guy who did like a really popular RSA animate thing about education reform, and he was giving a TED talk because people want to hear more of him. And he was saying that one of the biggest flaws in our education system, and I definitely agree with this, is the fact that it takes a very linear approach. And that's like, okay, the point of all of this is for you to get to college. So then the point of that would be for you to get and be a worker, have a career in something. And then it's all from the beginning about what you must have one talent that must be there, and that's one thing you learn, and it's like you'll keep getting better and better as you go along. But it's like he said, was a really good thing, like a 3-year-old is not half a 6-year-old, you know. You're not any less when you're younger. You have to keep learning and you keep changing. It's not about evolving, but it's about, you know, having revolutions throughout your life, and how and about learning constantly. So this whole idea that you're gonna go to school to go to college is really limiting. Especially like with the idea that, oh, you must be with people who are of your own age. What? Like, there are more meaningful things we can have in common with somebody else than our age. Why is everybody of the same age put together in a classroom? Why does this have to be this linear thing, acting like you're gonna get to some goal and that's gonna be it, and you're gonna end it over there? Like, I think that's very constraining. I think that's a huge problem, and so I don't agree with that. That's my point. I think it should be about developing your own interests, and then you might be better at something, but you might not care for it, you know. So what's the point of you doing it if you're not going to care about what you're doing? You're probably not going to, even if you have a lot of talent for it, you're probably not going to be as good at it.
Okay, so any other opinion? So, I mean, let me rephrase the difference between aptitude versus interest. That you may have interest, but you may not have right aptitude. So what does it mean? It means that, I mean, let's say you are exposed to math, science, engineering, or philosophy, or literature, but in due course you might show that you are not very good in creative thinking. if you do not have creative thinking, you would not be able to be a good writer. But if you are good in math, if you are good in, let's say, mechanical thing, there is a potential that you would be able to be a good mechanical engineer or electrical engineer or aeronautic engineer. Yes.
Okay, I was just gonna say, first of all, career counseling is just that, counseling. At the end of the day, the student is going to have to make a choice.
Yes.
So I do believe in aptitude versus interest. Aptitude actually, because let's say you're went through college 2 years, and suddenly you want to get engineering, and your prereqs had nothing to do with math. It had to do with a lot of arts and crafts and just different things, but not necessarily math. Engineering requires a rigorous math and sciences like physics. So as a counselor, even though that's your interest, you shouldn't even though the student interest is engineering, you still wouldn't recommend going through engineering because you know that the person might have a hard time because you have to go through almost all the math, like to calculus 3 differential equation, etc. So if the student actually build the foundation from a young age or previously, then you could actually advise them to go that route. But just because
that's a wonderful suggestion. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I, in some sort of sense, disagree with that because, well, the ideal would be, obviously, the point of this talk is so that we can move forward our nation and have more women and all this stuff into the STEM field, right? But interests matter more because, like she said, if you don't care for it, you're not going to do a good job. And, well, if you don't like what you're doing every single day, then you're not going to be happy. And that's the basis. So maybe if you do have a background in arts and crafts and you're good at it, but at the end of the day it doesn't fulfill some kind of emotional void in your life, then that's not going to make you happy, and maybe that will make you work that much harder at a STEM field because you enjoy it so much more, even if it's more trouble, even if it's a longer route. It's all about human emotion. If you want to do something, you're going to do it. Doesn't matter if you're good at it or if you're not. If you have a strong enough will, you're going to be encouraged to do that.
a little rebuttal. Again, that's why I point out in the beginning, counseling is just counseling. At the end of the day, the student is going to have to choose. But just because you're interested in the field, you have no experience with it. How do you know you're going to do well, or how do you know you actually don't know?
Yes, that's a very good point. Basically, there is no conflict between aptitude and interest, right? They can go along together. So we are not making a contrast between aptitude. So in the beginning, you are exposed to different branches of science, technology, or any learning material, and then slowly and steadily you are given a track. So it's not necessarily that you are being forced to pursue. So there is no conflict between aptitude and interest. So you can do both. You may have aptitude, and at the same time you are interested to pursue that. So yes.
So I have I don't know what it is, but it's a point kind of to both of you. But is that for you, it's you're saying that they don't have necessarily the background mathematically to pursue that train of thought, that study. But my immediate question is, what's preventing them? It's 2 years into college from going back and learning that material. There's nothing, isn't there? There's nothing really prohibiting them from doing so. And at this university, we have all the resources available for them to do that. And then from your point on, the fact that they should pursue what they're interested in, my question coming from would be that for us in our society, would that be the right choice of action? Because wouldn't we want to maximize and be the most efficient society possible? So even though your interest might be in one thing, your high aptitude in one thing makes it so valuable to society that for you not to pursue that, even though it's not your interest, would be negatively impacting the rest of society. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm just saying, what can we say about that? That's another thing that has to go into that. So even though we might have thousands of women who, yes, who could be, maybe if we want to say have higher aptitude for some of these
sciences, STEM sciences. Maybe because their interests, like even though their interests aren't there, they should study it.
All right, so okay, please.
Well, the reality is that because it's all, the focus is for you to go through school in order to have a career of some sort and end it there, and that's the point of your learning. There are limits to people being able to do that. We have a credit amount limit in this university. You can only take a certain amount of credits, and then you have to pay out-of-state tuition. And I think if you're an out-of-state student, then your tuition doubles or something like that. And tuition is already very expensive to begin with that. So I mean, there's a lot of limits to that. So you can't isolate one thing from the other. I mean, there's social, economic, historical, etc.
Okay, I hear you. So any other? Yes.
I think it's about a perfect balance, but I am going to go ahead and put particular emphasis on aptitude, because I would say that as a counselor, I'm going to be looking for that student's strength. Let's say they're fascinated by the medical sciences, but I clearly see a struggle with organic chemistry. They're failing, they fail chemistry 1, so they have C's. As a counselor, I'm not going to be like, okay, well, yeah, you could apply to medical school, you can go into research. That would be absurd for me to do that. So it's a balance, but I'm going to put that emphasis on.
Okay, any other opinion? If not, yes.
Okay, so I want to go back to you. So what my point is that yes, in a perfectly logical society, your role would be to make it as efficient as possible. The point that I was trying to bring into this is, while this is a science-related topic, you still have to take into account a person's own interests and aspirations. What if I'm great at science, and what if in some other destiny I could cure cancer, but if I don't care for it, then I'm not going to do it, right? So it's just logically it sounds great, but realistically that doesn't necessarily mean to happen. And on a career counseling kind of thing, you go to these people because obviously they're more experienced than you and they kind of see what it is, and I won't ever take away from that, because these people are here, they're resources to help you, to guide you when you need guidance. But aside from that, if you feel something makes you happy and if you work hard enough for it, why not?
All right, so let's move on. We have lots to cover. So then comes into picture the role of K to 12 institutions. So I mean, we'll see some information that recent statistics or interviews suggest that 64% women that we are talking about today, they believe that they are not well prepared in their early education years. So that might be one obstruction in order for them to pursue in later years in science, technology, math and engineering. So 64%, it's an appalling number. They do believe that they are not coming prepared when they are pursuing in their college or university education. So any thought? Do you agree with that? Or you are part of 64%, or out of that 64%, what is your experience? What experience you went through when you were in high school? Yes.
In my case, I'm a science major now, but I would have never thought when I was a high school student that I would become a science major. And I feel like science is not emphasized enough, the importance of it. It's not taught the way you get when you take those college courses. So I do agree with that.
So there basically any other, yes.
Okay, so I went to an inner city school in Miami. So obviously that just off the bat teaches you that terrible education. And I wouldn't go to class, I would skip, and it'd be math, it'd be pre-calc, it'd be physics, whatever, and I would still pass with a B. So that I think isn't because well, not necessarily because I didn't care, because if my teachers didn't care, why should I? And so obviously when you're that young, you there's people who have perseverance from young, but growing up in that type of situation, I'm not gonna care for science. So when I get here, of course that sets me up for major failure in the math and science fields, and of course that's something that I can already automatically rule out that's something that I'm not good at and something that I'm not going to pursue just because of my background. Because like I was saying before with aptitude, I'm not interested because I'm not good at it. So
All right. So any other opinion? Yes.
Just that the most asked question from students in K through 12 when exposed to mathematics is, when am I going to need this? And I think that needs to be answered. I mean, and the answer is that if you prepare now, you've got more opportunities later. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, the analogy I like to use is that if someone tells you that you cannot visit Australia, okay, most of us won't. But being told that you can't, that's a whole other thing.
Exactly. Yes. Basically, that comes as an obstruction. Yes.
I mean, simply being prepared for something, even if you're not going to use it, that gives you that much more freedom when you grow up, and when you grow up is when you're going to be making decisions that you never really would have even considered when you're 12 or 13 or whatever.
All right. So let's move on to next slide that tells that many students believe that the decision comes in their early ages as opposed to later ages. So if you do not have a solid foundation in our elementary, middle school or high school years, then most likely would not pursue science education in the to begin with. So there are some other issues, that lack of female role model including mom. So there are some correlation, there are some studies suggest that if mom is a lawyer, not dad, if mom is a lawyer or scientist or engineer, there is a chance that a daughter would be a future medical doctor or pharmacist or scientist. So, and not only that, there are not many role models. We all have a role model one way or the other. I mean, you tell other people that I have a role model or not, but still we follow one way or the other somebody as a role model. So role model has an impact in choosing your field. What is your opinion? And unfortunately, there are not many women in the marketplace in United States or anywhere in the world. So the gender gap is not only US problem, it is a global problem, and the number comes on and off same. So there are some suggestions in literature that the lack of the presence of role model may have contributed to some extent to this gender gap. Yes.
I want to say that I agree with the statement that the female role model in this industry is lacking. When I was a little bit younger in elementary school, I actually showed talent with math. Right now I study political science, and in all honesty, I feel like not knowing that there were a lot of females that were going into that industry, no matter what other people said, because once people saw that I was good at math, they kind of, I went to an inner city school also, so they kind of looked at me like, oh, look at her, she's good at math, So I kind of did not want to be that person, that girl who's sitting in the corner reading a book about math,
Yes, basically it is not a norm, or it is not a normal scenario, right?
Because at that time, I kind of wanted to be socially accepted more than
That's a wonderful point. That's a wonderful point.
Developing a skill, and I didn't learn about what's her name? I kept thinking about her name. Mia something. The first black woman astronaut.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know her name until like middle school, and by that time I had already developed other skills for arts and visual arts and performing arts, and I kind of felt an interest in that as well, and I wanted to develop that instead of other skills.
I mean, what female role models are glorified in this field? Not many.
Alright, so let's move forward. Another one is gender stereotyping, that women cannot and would not be performing well in engineering, in field as a field engineer or computer scientist. So that gender stereotyping is one opposing factor for women not to pursue STEM. Do you agree with that? Yes.
There's a picture going around on the internet. It has the name of this lady. I forgot her name. That's telling of how bad this is. She discovered what the sun is made of, and it says, "You would know who I am if I would have had a penis." And it's very true. Like you don't know about who she is, because if a guy would have invented one, it's very probable that we would have heard more about,
Or
who
be
invented.
studying her or him,
Yeah.
excuse me, in school.
Yeah, exactly. And
All right.
the other thing is like this
Yes.
idea that there's just two genders and you're either a male or a female, and that you have both to conform to these two ideals, and that automatically sets people in a trap to say, I'm going to try to be like whatever my society idealizes as being the female. So if people are looking at a female and saying, well, you're supposed to be this way, you're not supposed to be into math or science or any of that, that's not what you're going to do. And it's adding more role models, I think, is not going to be enough, because this is a deeper problem than that.
All the girls on the
Alright, so another problem I'd like to bring to your attention is less family-friendly flexibility in STEM field. I mean, when you're working in a company or in any workplace, mom takes sometimes some vacation for giving birth or family matter. There is one issue that is one factor to oppose women to pursue the STEM career. I mean, do you agree with that? Alright, so let's see what else we have. Lack of social motivation. I mean, in Korea, in Bangladesh, in China, basically if you are pursuing science, technology, math and engineering degree, you are a social hero. Because when you are a poet, you do not have much of value. But when you are an engineer, wow, you are a medical doctor or you are an engineer, wow, I have a salute for you. But unfortunately in the United States that is not the case. So there are some suggestions that it is one of the many factors. So if we do not acknowledge, appreciate, encourage our workforce to be integrated into the mainstream or emerging stream, then we would not be able to attract more people, particularly women in the field. Any thought? So you agree that social motivation might be a factor, or?
Yeah, I think that is a factor, but we have to like counteract that. There's financial motivation, if you become one of these, then if you're following one of these curves, you're gonna get paid, but then for that to counteract that is you might be working 60 hours a week, making $400,000 a year, but then when will you have time to actually spend that money? And then, then you have the other problem, I would say, is that the other thing that there's a lack of is the, with the financials, that if you do want to study these fields into the future, you can't just get a bachelor's degree where there's probably a lot of funding available for students, but like for medical school it's very expensive, for a master's in many of the sciences it's very expensive, to get a PhD it's very expensive. So the motivation for students to pursue after, first you have to pursue to want to go into college and make that investment, then pursue other further investments in their education, and then with the rate of return, it's very low. That's what's really scary. In those countries you're talking about, you're making examples about, how is the price difference associated?
Yes, basically they are paid. I mean, I was talking to one of my students, my TA in Nova University. He got his bachelor degree in pharmacy from India, and he said that he paid only $100 for his bachelor degree, $100 altogether. And now when he came down to United States to have, now he's about to get his PharmD, PhD in pharmacy, and he has a student loan of $150,000. So $100 versus $150,000. So now, what basically, I mean, India and China both represent around around 3 billion population, half of the population in the globe, and their college education, university education, high school education, most are paid by the government. The students do not pay. Yes.
Another thing too, along with the lack of social motivation and along those quarters of not students not having pay is that most of the Asian cultures are actually collectivist, while the United States are individualistic.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Because of that individualistic thought, even when we look at school systems, they're like, they see one person doing so well, they're like, okay, we'll take him away from everyone else and we'll put him ahead. Which is counteractive to a society because you're taking away a talent that can be beneficial for society as a whole.
Yes. Good point. Good point. Any other opinion? Yes.
I think related to the lack of social motivation in this country, for very short-sighted reasons, the right-wing political punditry and politicians, they tend to demonize education. They demonize teachers. They demonize the teachers' unions. They demonize university campuses. I mean, some of these shock jocks on AM radio, they tell you don't send your kids to college, or they'll lose their faith in God or whatever. And it is such a horrible, horrible thing to do, because so much of civilization as a whole depends on continuous innovation, and that doesn't happen all by itself.
Well, they demonize college and education, but they mostly demonize it because of the social sciences. Like Rick Scott has a huge campaign against anthropology, and he says we should take funding away from the social sciences, especially anthropology, and put it into the STEM research. And there was something I read recently from, there was a conference, I forgot who it was, but it was a group of people who were supposed to make decisions about government and education and what the funding goes to, and they were saying that engineering and the STEM fields are good, they're safe, but that geography, anthropology, sociology are dangerous, and they can create things, they could create revolutionary thoughts that are not good for us to continue our rule. So we should not fund those. We should make sure people don't get into those. So that's, I think, the main source of the demonizing, not so much the STEM.
So, I mean, we are running out of time. We have a lot more to discuss. So now, I mean, in your opinion, have I missed anything that we need to add in this number, or yes?
The stuff about gender stereotyping, I think something kind of tangentially related to that is very, very popular stereotype that a person can be attractive or smart, but not both. And so you see someone who's attractive and you instantly assume that they're, the dumb blonde or whatever. And I'm just reminded of the story of Hedy Lamarr, who made this breakthrough in frequency hopping radio technology, and no one listened to her because she was an attractive woman, and attractive women are stupid.
That's a good one. So let's move on. We have talked about different, probable causes that have contributed to that huge gender gap. Now, how about potential remedies? How to resolve this issue, a burgeoning issue? So let's talk about that. First of all, social and national encouragement. One might be the social and national encouragement that we found that to some extent it lacks. We do not have that kind of heuristic. If you are in India or in China and you invent something, the first thing you don't talk is how much money you will bring. Rather, you talk that, well, you have made a huge contribution. To give you a perspective, I have invented some new material last year. Patent is pending. So the material is basically now, as a forensic scientist, we bring our material, environmental, forensic, clinical, toxicological material to the laboratory and then analyze. And in due course, when you are bringing the material to the laboratory, the matrix being changed continuously. I mean, it's a dynamic matrix. Anything that you have a glass of Coke, you purchase it from GCI and heading back to your lab, you are working, and in the meantime, you are losing the carbon dioxide content, and the test could be different as you enter into your lab. From the way you open the can, and a minute goes, it changes. So the material I invented is you take it to the field, get it extracted, analyze, put it in a small vial, and bring back to the lab or FedEx or UPS to the analytical laboratory. So the first thing I was asked, and is still being asked, that, well, would it make you a rich guy? How much money will you expect? Would that be in million or in thousands? But nobody said, well, you have done a good job to science. Alright? So that tells our mindset. So social and national encouragement may be able to contribute to bring the gap, to close the gap. Do you agree? Alright, so that might be one thing. Anything that you would like to add?
Well, national encouragement mostly goes toward getting people to do these things, but for the military. And while they're doing that, they defund other things like social sciences because they're threatening to those things. So I don't know. I think it's not good necessarily if it's going towards stuff like that.
All right. So any other opinion? If not, let's move forward. So the next one, it's a very interesting issue: single-sex education versus mixed-sex education. What it means that there is a study done by University of Peterborough scientists. They found that in Bangladesh, the country I'm from, or same in India as well, that there are many institutions, even there are some institutions in United States with single gender learning platform, so only male or female. So there is a point that when you are, it came from my experience as well, that if I do have 3 students in a group working in the lab, so the male students will always be handling the reagent, handling the instrument, and female students will take notes. So the point here is, if you are, women has a tendency not to surpass male, so normally they are in a position to concede, and male always had a tendency to dominate. So if there is a mixed sex education, there is a way that women will always concede, as opposed to challenge that, well, I am better than you. So the research suggests that if there is a single sex based education, women would be more capable in performing or taking the ground on STEM education. What is your view?
It doesn't solve the root of the problem.
It won't solve the problem, right? That's fine. So any other? Yes.
Yeah, I actually think it is going to bring more problems, actually, to tell you the truth. Besides some of the obvious, it could be bias also. An all-female school versus an all-male school. You go into a job interview.
So yes, I do agree with your point. Yes, I would agree with your point. So then comes create a positive environment to break the gender stereotyping. So we are basically, as a society, as a government, we do not have any system in place that would equalize or make effort to bring the gap closer to each other. So we need to do more to create positive environment so that more women come forward to pursue their science, technology, math and engineering career. Any opinion, any thought, any addition? Alright, so let's see, stricter law for affirmative action in admission and employment. So as you know, there is a law going currently as I speak in Supreme Court that the case came from Michigan, that there are some discrepancy, racial gender discrimination in admission. So Supreme Court is hearing today on that case. So I mean, even though we do have some law in place to provide affirmative action, so it is not based on gender, age, sex, race, but at the end, one way or the other, we do see some kind of biasness. So what can we do to close the gap? More law, stricter, government control, or blade or something else? Is there anything that government or society can do to put in place the gender gap, or to bring that gap close? Yes.
I'm not sure how they can do it per se. I'm not gonna say if they can or not, but just thinking about it, how are they gonna do it? Are they gonna say you have to have this amount of female working in this corporation, or this amount of Asian, African American to work there? I don't see how. And how about if I'm a manager and I'm hiring people, and I honestly think a specific group of people will best fit my needs in the company. I just don't know how exactly it's going to work.
All right. So, any other opinion? Yes, sir.
Some of the comments earlier seem to be highlighting or implying that gender inequality is related to class and racial inequality. And then in other words, that these inequalities are interwoven. And so that addressing them, you might have to address this euphemism we use for the inner city school. You might have to address all these broader class, poverty, race issues to really get at how interwoven they are.
Yes, that's a wonderful point.
So I think that there shouldn't be stricter laws for like government control necessarily. Like not like anybody was saying, the idea that in a company that you have to have a certain amount of any certain group of people of any race, or gender, or sex, and like you said, like it doesn't make sense from a management's perspective. You just want the most competent people. That's as close as it goes down to.
But to add to your comment, what if, let's say, I'm sitting in an interview board, all male, most likely in any company or corporation that is the case, and we do have 3 male versus 1 woman, so we have already built-in gender bias, right?
Yeah.
So we would prefer a male worker rather than a female worker. Isn't it true? So shouldn't there be some kind of regulation in place that at least there should be, if not strictly that 50% has to be women or 50% has to be male, shouldn't there be some kind of policy in place that would by all means, women are in disadvantageous position. All the statistics suggest that even if they are given the opportunity, but they are not in a position to utilize that opportunity. So that should be, don't you think that?
No, it's true. I reviewed that point because that goes back to say exactly the opposite of what he said. Is you're saying, yeah, of course, we see these 3 men and this 1 woman, so we already naturally. That's not the issue of the company or of the fact of the stereotype. It's the issue of you in your mind thinking that these 3 men are better. It's not that you can just go in and just say, even though there's 3 men and 1 woman applying, most likely just because there's 3 men, they're probably better suited or something. No, you have to check your references with this person.
Yes, I agree with that.
It goes more to be. You have to tackle the larger social issues. And so what government can do is actually invest more into the education, invest more into the community.
Very good point.
So to end that, because if you're looking at it like that, then that's just a band-aid solution. And that's what a lot of laws are, and that's what it all is just band-aid solutions, and it's not tackling the real issues. So you can't go into anything and expect to solve it by just putting in a law that makes it look better with the numbers.
Good point, very good point, yes.
Another thing is sexual harassment in the workplace. I've heard a lot from people, from women who are in these sort of mostly male areas, disciplines and stuff, and it's a problem, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, and it just discourages people from being in those spaces because they feel very vulnerable. Sorry, pronunciation.
All right, okay, so that is another one. And also we have talked about that women-friendly workplace. That is very important, that it is not the case. Sometimes women feel harassed. So what did I miss? Did I miss anything that you would like to add with this discussion, wonderful discussion? Yes.
According to what she was saying, here's the other thing that people need to keep in mind, especially when it comes to, we all know this is the United States and it's workplace, you know, and we understand that here you have to like speak English, you know, and this is going on like I would say, I don't know, everywhere or just here, because according to what she was saying, like people are being discouraged because not only being discouraged because they can't speak other languages other than English, when English is the primary language here. It's like I have this conflict all my life. Every time I will be at a job place, you know, people are asking me like, oh, don't you speak Spanish or don't you speak this, you know, when, hello, like what's going on here? You know, I grew up here, I was born here, I went to school here, and English is my primary language. Like, what's wrong with these jobs that are hiring people, but even taking in people who don't speak English at all whatsoever? And it's like where I work at, I remember my executive boss, you know, telling me that she got a complaint from a female coming from out of town, stating that she was criticizing, stating that everybody here in the company here assumed that I speak Spanish and everything, when, well, you get the picture.
All right, so any other opinion to add to that?
I don't think that really matters in the STEM field. I mean, it's not a very language-based profession, and I think this is a field in which people collaborate very globally. Like, it's something that it requires pretty much collaboration between people that are coming from different parts of the world, and that's why you tend to see a lot.
All right, so any other opinion? So if not, with that we'll conclude, and I would like to thank you all for participating in this very vibrant and informative discussion panel, and definitely I would look forward to seeing you again in near future. Thank you all.